Last time, we looked at how records work and how some of the most enduring forms of music emerged from European courts and churches. In this episode, we'll take a look at some of the other enduring genres of music that have their roots in Africa. I'm Charlotte Ritchie, and this is, for the record, an incomplete history of music. From tapping our feet to our very own heartbeats, rhythm is something that is inherent in all of us, and nowhere is that more obvious than in drumming. Drums, dating back to 6000 BCE, have been unearthed in Africa and China, but the act of drumming no doubt goes back much further than that. Many of the drumming rhythms we're most familiar with today come from a particular style of drum called the djembe, which can be traced back to around 1200 CE and the Mali Empire in West Africa.
The djembe in my language means let's get together. And when I say my language, I mean the Bambara, the Manding language we speak in Mali, Burkina, Ivory Coast, and Senegal and other countries. So djembe means let's get together. And the djembe were the first communication phone we used to communicate to each other. It's like you will pick your phone and call someone. So this used to be the one when you bang in, like play it in the village, everyone will freeze, stop what you're doing and pay attention. So then we play the djembe and I ask all the village to pay attention the message the griot gonna send out. So the first things we know something is coming is when a drummer starting doing this. There you go. It's a sign of pay attention. It's also the same sign of people who want to ask the answer, like the people who've been here before us, the people who started before us. It's to ask them, did I allow to present myself? So you ask for forgiveness first and ask them to give you the right to do it. Don't let me down. So sometimes people ask me, hey, Musa, your instrument looks so great, but why will you cut a tree to make your instrument? Because you say you are a storyteller, you bring peace, you die, but why will you cut a tree? I say, listen, for us as a griot, our job is to bring peace, to bring things back to life. So the wood had to be a dead tree, a tree which already fell. So yeah, we get the wood back to life, meaning we turn it to a djembe, and the goat skin or cow skin, we go to the people who sell meat. We buy the skin and we bring that animal back to life. So right now we can see the drum, the wood, an old tree, and the skin on it, still living life with us, make people sing and dance. So this used to be so important, and it's like it's 800 years old now. So the traditional way on the drum. So first we got something which we call opening song, and the opening is a three note which we call pre-petim pim petim paraba, which sound like this. So that is the beginning of the djembe, and every teacher who teach djembe, we teach this to all the drummers, because this is, again, I'm calling you, get ready. So anytime you hear, you say, I'm calling you, get ready. And then we go straight to rhythm. So now in the traditional way, And this is when it's become solo. When I play what people play. But at the same time, I add my feeling and my vibe in, and they become mine.
These rhythms would end up having an immeasurable effect on music around the world. Of course, the way that most of these beats first reached Western ears was as a result of an increasing African diaspora in the 1600s due to a centuries-long international slave trade. Millions upon millions of people in Africa were forcibly transported to Europe, South America, the Caribbean, and America to endure a life of slavery. And yet, even in the face of relentless attempts to strip them of their humanity and identity, they would fight to preserve and protect their cultural traditions, such as music. To further understand this resistance, we headed way down south to Laura, a former sugarcane plantation on the west bank of the Mississippi River in Louisiana.
When this plantation was founded in 1805, the first inventory of enslaved people included not only Creoles who were born in Louisiana, so these are Afro-descended people who were born specifically in Louisiana. It also includes 5 different ethnicities of African people. So there's Kanga, Congo, Mina, Moku, and Kesi. So in this one place, you have a diverse population of Africans and Afro-descended people. And so they're each of them coming with their own linguistic background, their own cultural background, their own foodways, their own music traditions. So there is a blending that's going to happen here. It's a clash as well of what's happening here. And so each of them is bringing their own musical traditions, and then that eventually begins to merge into more sort of percussive sounds and things like that. And you have those sounds here along the Mississippi River, because over time, again, we're seeing different groups of African and Afro-descended people that are thrown together on these plantations. You've got all of those things that are blending together here that are giving us different musical traditions, different linguistic traditions, and all of that. Most people, when they think about plantations, when they think about these stories, their vision of that and their perspective of that is the American South with cotton plantations. This is sugarcane country. The people here are living in a very, very different climate. They're living in a very different kind of workspace. They're living in a very different social and cultural and linguistic environment. And so cutting sugarcane is very labor intensive, so they would have been singing these kinds of songs in the fields to maintain the rhythm. And music in the sense of working in a sugarcane field is very important for rhythm maintenance, because it's muddy, it's hot, it's wet, there are snakes, there are rats, and if you get off the beat of that music, you're going to get hit with a cane knife, and then that leads to infections, that leads to gangrene, that leads to amputations. And so music becomes very, very important in these spaces as a tool for working. It becomes important as a tool for sort of perhaps keeping one's mind off of the grueling, labor-intensive work that this was, and then it then leads to the lullabies that sing you to sleep at night so that you can get up and start it all over again the next morning.
Some of the lullabies and stories from the Laura plantation endure to this day. In fact, the very first documentation of the tales of Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox come from Laura. These tales are a central figure in African-American folklore and arrived at Laura from Senegal, where they were quite probably told, with music, to the children on the plantation. The stories were later famously and, if we're being wildly generous, controversially adapted into the 1946 musical Song of the South. Not just an essential means of safety in the fields, music and storytelling was unquestionably a key part of morale for enslaved persons as well, offering some respite wherever it could be found.
Kept they watching
So Laura Lokul Gore was the great-granddaughter of the founders of this plantation. She had a tiny playel piano in the house, and she had music lessons, as all young ladies of her social status did during that time period. So she was playing little waltzes and minuets and things like that that would have been popular during the time period from sheet music. So there are descendants of the people who had been enslaved here who have then remained, and so there's still this very, very close proximity between the former slaves and the big house. And Laura does write that there is one of these young Creole Afro-descended people who would hide behind the piano and listen to her practicing her music, and he could then be heard in the yard whistling the tunes that she was practicing. This would have been in the 1870s, so this is after the end of the Civil War in 1865. When Laura was playing the bird waltz, was she trying to speed the tempo up a little bit based upon how she might have heard enslaved people or formerly enslaved people with their rhythms for their way they're singing? I don't know. Perhaps. It's fun to think about.
Many of these songs would come to be known as spirituals. Christian songs with African cultural influences combined with their traumatic experience of slavery. Perhaps the most well-known of these songs is Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, a recording of it from around the turn of the 20th century by the Fisk Jubilee Singers is one of the oldest surviving recording of a spiritual.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Carry me home, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home, swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home.
The spirituals would evolve over time, particularly after emancipation. Freed people of colour would travel the South, singing spirituals and telling stories accompanied by the cheapest European imported instruments they could find, usually a guitar. And one sold soul at a crossroads later, you've got the blues.
Blues to me is like life as we live it, as we've lived it, as I feel that we'll live it in the future. Otherwise, it's about people, it's about things. And not all of it is bad, some of it is good. And of course, to me, it has the feeling of other types of music. In fact, I like to think that blues is kind of like a mother tree. Many branches of music have sprouted from it. And if I'm listening to rock, I can hear a little blues from time to time. If I'm listening to soul music, I hear a little blues. And jazz, to me, good jazz is when you can really feel a little blues. It's just when they start to improvise it, it's a mod. But other than that, you got the good beat. That to me is the better jazz.
B.B. King never played and sang at the same time because he only had one voice. So when he finished singing with his vocal cords, he sang with his guitar, and all his guitar lines are very kind of vocal-like for that reason. But if you watch him, he sings and then kind of takes over the line and then stops, and it's always call and answer. He's never playing at the same time as singing.
Call and response plays a major role in the evolution of the music to come from the American South, as many of the old spirituals become blues staples over time.
She had to cry sometime. She had to mourn sometime. She was working on the building. Oh, soon as she got through,
But some songs, such as Wade in the Water, may have also been utilised as secret codes by the Underground Railroad, being used as both a warning and instructions for escapees to head to the local rivers or streams to hide their scent from tracker dogs. This is why certain music was often banned on plantations by slave owners. There is a place about 50 miles from the Mississippi River, however, where music by enslaved people would put down roots. If we say that Babylon is a place that shaped ancient music, then there is a solid case to be made that the modern-day Babylon is New Orleans, a city that, amongst many other things, is the birthplace of jazz.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's one you all can sing with us when the Saints go marching in.
So right now we're in New Orleans, Louisiana, right behind the French Quarter. There was this beautiful grassy area that the indigenous and Indian who lived in this area called a very special space. And in this space, this is the place where the Africans would congregate every Sunday. So it's called Congo Square in honor of the Africans who came from their majority place called the Congo.
Yes, I want to be.
Well, here in Louisiana, the French mostly took Africans from the Senegambia region. So anywhere from Senegal, Gambia, there were people here from all type of Mindi and Mande people from Benin. So there was all type of people from all over the west coast of Africa that were coming. And actually, in Congo Square, they would get with their ethnic group. So all of the different ethnic groups, whether it be from Angola, whether it be from the Congo, whether it be from Benin, they would come together with their African nationality and they would play in their own African musical style.
Well, especially in New Orleans, there's a core of us that are really dedicated to keeping the history going, really talking about the history. The King of France, in establishing this French colony, because it was Catholic colony, decided that enslaved people could not be made to work on a Sunday. Everybody had to go to church. So they went to the cathedral or wherever, but after church is when they went to Congo Square. Because of that, the African rhythms survived here in Congo Square because they could play drums. Other slaveholding states, they couldn't play drums because they were afraid of sending messages.
These enslaved West Africans were able to express their culture, to have their own trade, to create a market, and have their own traditions and music performed, and so that this music survived.
Now when the Saints go marching in, now when the Saints go marching in, yes, I want to be in that number. When the Saints go marching in. Sing it again. Now when the
Well, here in colonial Louisiana, it was very different than other places in America. Of course, in America, one of the first things in Virginia and other places, they outlawed drumming, African drumming. But here in New Orleans, Louisiana, every Sunday, the French allow the Africans to drum. And they drummed for generations, not just for a year or two, but for hundreds of years, from 1719 to 1819, all the way up into the Civil War. So this infusion of African rhythms, beats, including with European beats and rhythms from the opera, the polka, all of these different musical sounds coming from Latin America, Caribbean, and etc. These Africans are hearing these sounds and they're adapting to these different rhythms and sounds. And eventually, as they pick up European instruments like the trumpet and the saxophone, these rhythms and sounds come out very unique, and they created their own musical genre that we call jazz here in New Orleans.
just that the church demanded Sunday be a day of rest, but the slave owners also felt that providing a brief period of controlled cultural expression would help prevent unrest and disobedience amongst their slaves.
Congo Square was a place, well, it still is a place in New Orleans where people of African descent participated in their homeland culture. It's continuing the culture of your family for me, to continue in a connection to things that were taken away from us. Also honoring the people who came up with sounds and culture that influence the way the world sees music. I think that's monumentous.
So one of the primary beats that you hear on Congo Square is the bambula. The bambula is a classical rhythm of beat and is actually considered one of the foundational beats of jazz.
Also, you know, there were European traditions, brass band traditions, European instrumentation, all of these things combining ultimately to result in what we think of as early jazz, you know, around the 1890s, beginning of the turn to the 20th century.
Wir stehen hier vor einer Vitrine, die sehr unterschiedliche Posaunenmodelle uns zeigt. Und diese Bauform ist üblich gewesen in der ganzen Welt für die Zeit bis etwa nach dem Zweiten Weltkrieg, bis 1945. Beispielsweise in Frankreich, in England hat man diese Posaunen eigentlich über Jahrhunderte hingebaut. Neu passiert am Ende des 18. Jahrhunderts, um 1800, die Entwicklung der sogenannten deutschen Posaune. Und da ist es zum Beispiel in Leipzig der Christian Friedrich Sattler, ein Blechblasinstrumentenmacher, der aus einer Familie von Blasinstrumentenmachern hervorgeht. Und er konstruiert diesen Prototyp der sogenannten deutschen Posaune, indem er den Schallbecher hier sehr stark erweitert. Und vor allem, was als zweites parallel zu dieser Entwicklung passiert, ist nämlich die Entwicklung der Trompeten mit Ventilen. Das hat dazu geführt, dass der Instrumentenbau in Sachsen, in Magdenkirchen, in Klingenthal, diese Ventilbauweise sehr stark gefördert hat und dann auch ja, in großen Stückzahlen in die Welt exportiert hat.
Ultimately, it's the mixture of West African rhythms, European instrumentation and traditions, Native American traditions, musical traditions, and New Orleans was this port city where all of this stuff could come together and all the ingredients were there for it. So basically, we say that it's like that New Orleans is kind of the trunk of the tree.
Coming from a place that is what I call a root incubator of the world's music, gives you an idea of the whole spectrum of music, of modern music, you know.
The same is true elsewhere around the world. Wherever the barbarism of slavery goes, so too do the rhythms of Africa.
This, for example, cajon was a box that was used at the very beginning. The theories, there are many theories, but one of the theories is that the African population, when they came as slaves to work in the cotton fields in Peru, they were playing fruit boxes. So where the fruit was collected, they were just grabbing that and then playing at nights when, you know, the Spanish people would allow them to play. And then they will play and dance because it's something that they came from, you know, they brought from Africa, naturally. And then they will start playing, they will start mixing with more Peruvians there, and then the music got a little bit Peruanized, let's call it like that. You know, it became more Peruvian in that, whatever that means. But the instrument then became a little bit more shaped as a box, so that you can play it. And this kept for years and years and years, until, Paco de Lucia came, fall in love with that fantastic instrument and took it to Spain. And then in Spain, it became the main instrument for flamenco.
Pues sí, el cajón lo descubrí iba yo con el sexteto, el grupo mío de gira por América. Entonces yo vi el cajón y me llamó mucho la atención. Luego cogí yo la guitarra y empecé a tocar con él y vi clarísimamente que esa era la percusión del flamenco.
While music was often a rare glimmer of something good, it's worth noting that music isn't always used with good intentions. Unfortunately, we can't tell the history of music without also going into some really dark corners.
Music is very important for marking out what's happening as different from everyday life. Back in the early centuries of Christianity, unaccompanied singing was something that differentiated Christianity from the pagan religions around at the time. The early church, the first 4 or 5 centuries, is still a time when human sacrifice is quite common in other religions. And human sacrifice always goes with a lot of noise, because sacrificial victims are meant to be cheerful about being sacrificed, but they aren't always. And therefore you need drums and gongs and whistles and trumpets and all kinds of loud noise going on. So one of the things that differentiated Christianity from other religions, and is explicitly there in the writings of people at the time, is the fact that the singing was not accompanied. That this is not to do with pagan sacrifice, it's not to do with the Roman theatres. This is something very different and more sober. That we're not screaming cries because somebody is about to be sacrificed to the pagan gods, but we're singing reasoned words.
I mean, in torture, music in torture, when you discuss that, the use of music, it has been proven that Barney was used for example, some torture. And Barney is for kids. Even though, some governments said that they don't use it, of course, but there had been lots of movement, like, for example, 0 decibels. It was a movement done by artists that didn't want their songs to be used in any kind of torture to prisoners. But Barney was used then, I mean, the song that, you love me, I love you, okay. And it was because music is usually associates with memories, belonging, love, nurturing. And a kid's song will usually bring those feelings to you, especially if you are from that culture. So if you distort it, if you loop it in a different way, if you really play with that music, it will play with your head. So your memories of childhood, it will be distorted by the distortion that I will bring with this loaded emotional song or sound. So if I do that, I put you in a dark place and then I repeat that distorted and unfinished, let's say, it will really make you mad. And this is what people want with music torture, just make you mad.
The unique power of music has been recognised by some of history's worst people. There's a reason unpopular leaders use popular songs at their rallies, because these songs are a shortcut to emotion and imply a positive connection that doesn't exist. It's why most artists respond with intense displeasure. Music was also used in some horrifying ways during World War II, in the Nazi concentration and death camps. In places like Auschwitz, orchestras were sometimes forced to play during the selection process to deceive newly arrived prisoners into a false sense of security. Prisoners would often be forced to play their favourite music, as their fellow prisoners were tortured and worse. The same prisoners with musical ability were periodically kept alive longer so they could play on command for entertainment for Nazi officers. So while the beauty of music and the skill of the musicians was recognised, and even desired, the actual human being creating that music was not. During the same period in the Soviet Union, dictator Joseph Stalin even had his own music prize.
Well, I'm interested not just in music, but that's how music sort of functions in society and discourse about music, what people say about music. So with Stalin's Music Prize, what we're talking about is basically the musical part of the state prize which was called the Stalin Prize, and which was given to people in various arts, to painters and theater directors and ballet dancers and so on. So it all started from 1941 and went on until Stalin's death. He was a musical man. He sang, he went to the opera, and because he went to the opera and he went to the Bolshoi Theatre usually, he cared about what kind of operas were shown there, and he would make sure that all his favorite opera singers would get lots of prizes. Basically, for new composers, contemporary composers like Shostakovich, it could be very dangerous, when he comes to see your opera and he doesn't like it, as happens with Shostakovich's opera Lady Macbeth of Mtsensk, then trouble starts the next day, basically.
That trouble took many forms, including the Stalinist regime arresting, sending to labour camps and even executing various musicians, particularly Ukrainian folk singers known as kobzars. Kobzars were traditionally blind troubadours dating back to the 1600s and were all but erased in the 1930s by Stalin, as he saw them as bastion of independent Ukrainian national identity, once again highlighting the power of music as a marker of culture. Soviet authorities invited all Ukrainian kobzars to attend a congress in 1932, and those that attended were all promptly taken outside the city and put to death. Mercifully, today, the kobzar tradition is making a comeback as Ukraine is once more forced to fight for its national identity.
I have a class here in Kiel, okay, and where I teach music, emotion, and identity and belonging. And we discuss lots of brain associations with music. So if right now you receive a phone call, and you're listening to music that is really, really happy, really, I don't know, Justin Bieber, baby, baby, you're listening to that, and then you receive a call that informs you of something really, really nasty, that your dad died, that somebody died, that you, in that minute that you receive that, while listening to that kind of music, you will associate that to something sad. So next time you listen to Justin Bieber, Baby, Baby, it's not going to be easy listening, it's going to be heavy for you, and it will bring those emotions. And I think that is one of the reasons that music is so important, because it can really bring emotions, you can associate different things with that. If you have been traumatized, tortured with music, you can associate those issues. So that is something very, very powerful too.
Thankfully, for the most part, music is used to bring people together in a positive way. And nowhere is that more evident than where we've just spent a lot of this episode.
Come on down and let the good time roll.
New Orleans. It's arguable that nowhere on earth is music more entwined with the place's very fabric of existence than New Orleans. Music is everywhere, all the time, 24/7, 365, not just in the bars and the clubs, but on every street corner, front porch, and town square. It is not just a way of life, but a metaphor for it. And with so many unique musical traditions, it's worth taking an incomplete look at some of them.
In my mind, there's no place like New Orleans. I lived in Houston for 10 years, and when I decided to move back home, my last Sunday singing at church, the priest told people I was going to save souls in another country. And everybody looked and he said New Orleans, and they were like, oh, yeah.
And music is everywhere in New Orleans. When I think about it, it's like if you grow up in New Orleans, you're gonna have some kind of something in you that music thrives in you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you go outside, you can see little kids, shouldn't even be old enough to pick up an instrument. They'll be walking down the street with an instrument, Or if you see a band pass and these kids jump in line with the band, like, I'm gonna learn this thing too, It just happens. I don't know. I don't know if it's the air or food. I don't know what it is, but it's just like a natural thing.
Quick roll call for just some of the musicians across genres to have come out of that one small Gulf city. Louis Armstrong, Mahalia Jackson, Alan Toussaint, Trombone Shorty, Dr. John, Lil Wayne, Fats Domino, John Batiste.
It's hard to believe how many great musicians have come out of New Orleans and have influenced other musicians.
The Meters, the Neville Brothers, Sidney Bechet, Kermit Ruffins, Jelly Roll Morton, DJ Khaled, Better Than Ezra.
In the world that I grew up in, you begin to participate in activities, social activities, spiritual activities, where music plays a role. A Mardi Gras parade where there's music, or a jazz fest.
I always tell people it's the only reason you stand in mud and crawfish heads with one foot about to fall into a ditch while you're waiting for Aretha Franklin. We don't like it, we need it.
Wynton Marsalis, Dirty Dozen, Irma Thomas, Randy Newman, Professor Longhair.
You may be attending a funeral procession or a memorial for a family member or a member of the community.
It's not strange to us because we've been seeing that since we've been in this world. Like, we don't know no other way but to celebrate life, you know what I'm saying? So it has its sad part during the service. We're gonna cry and all of that stuff. But when it's all said and done, we're gonna celebrate your life, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're gonna do what you would want us to do. You don't want us to go on the rest of our life crying because you're not here no more. You want us to represent you and you know, enjoy and continue to prosper and move on in life, you know.
Second Line got its name from the group of participants in funeral processions, at processions where brass bands would accompany the family and the hearse from the church to the cemetery. And there would be the family and the brass band, and that would be considered the first line. And then behind the first line was the second line, which was all the members of the community who would come out to participate in these beautiful ceremonies. And these processions would make their way from the church to the cemetery playing hymns and spirituals and funeral dirges. Once the body had been buried, the band would break into happier music.
And that is also a part of the culture, but you're just not stuck on the mourning part. You mourn because it's a part of it, and it's okay to grieve and weep and all of the above, but the ultimate goal for us in our culture, like he said, is not to mourn losing you, but to celebrate the time that we did get to spend with you.
And would play oftentimes some of the same songs, but at a faster beat, so that people would start dancing.
It'll go from that dirge, slower, solemn moment to hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away.
And that's when you may see photographs of people with umbrellas, and they would make their way back to the neighborhood, dancing behind the band. So this group of people became known as the Second Liners. The name of the dance became the Second Line, and the name of the event today is known as the Second Line. So it's a word that means a lot of things in New Orleans.
The whole Second Line process is a celebration of life process and the remembering of the ancestors process. People see the dancing part, but they don't see the first part.
It's this tradition that goes back hundreds of years that is still being practiced.
And so in New Orleans, especially Mardi Gras after Hurricane Katrina, that was the most therapeutic experience of my life. Because we were out, we were hearing the music, we were dancing with people we didn't know. How's your house? What happened to your furniture? I'm glad you're here. It was amazing, totally amazing. And that's how New Orleans uses it. We use music to cope, to celebrate, to be alive.
Well, where I'm sitting in this space at one time was an art gallery and an art studio. And the person who created the space, this gentleman, Larry Bornstein, he loved New Orleans music, and he loved New Orleans jazz, and he would have musicians. Some of these musicians had been forgotten, pioneers of New Orleans music. Some of them had actually been there sort of at the birth of jazz. He would invite these musicians to come sit here and perform and have their portraits painted. The reason being is in 1950s, New Orleans was segregated. Those types of activities were illegal. So this gentleman sort of understood the power of art and music to unite people. And that was what my parents continued. They formally created what we know today as Preservation Hall. And one by one, musicians, many who didn't have phone numbers, or maybe some had stopped performing altogether, or just had no place to perform. And that was what Preservation Hall became for a whole community of musicians. Was a home, a celebration of their lives, truly. The incredible music that has happened in this space and what it represents. You absolutely feel that. I know I've played here on nights where I've been overwhelmed by the presence of a feeling where I know that I'm not alone in this space. There are the musicians that I'm performing with, but there's also all of the other people that have performed here, and all of the people that they're associated with, and all of the generations and upon generations, and people who that we'll never even know in their families that laid the groundwork for us to be here today. And that those are the types of things that weigh heavy on me, that are part of, the reason why I wake up in the morning and do what I do, and why we're so committed to maintaining this space and providing this space for people, not just musicians, but also for audiences to come to. You feel the importance of this space when you're in it and when you perform here. It very easily could say Protection Hall. It could say Perseverance Hall. Those are the things that are important to me, to protect the people, protect a way of life, protect the values, protect principles. We value the way that we learned music. It was a communal process. We value the way that we mourn together, the way we celebrate together. It makes our lives so rich, And maybe that's also a part of living in New Orleans, is what values are important to musicians in New Orleans. We value the pace of our life here. We value the beauty of this city. We value our friendships. We value our friends. We value our community. That's what keeps us here.
Jazz is New Orleans' traditional music. It's its folk music in a way, and so it's intertwined with the culture, whether that's for weddings, for funerals, for all the different gatherings that happen during a year with food and all of these things. So it's all intertwined, and I think that's what kind of really is a defining factor in it, that this music ends up evolving over time and going to these other places, but it doesn't have that same cultural element.
Right, we're standing in Congo Square, which is in the heart of Louis Armstrong Park, which is in Treme. And you can't walk around with Treme without hearing the brass bands, without seeing the funeral culture, without seeing Haiti or Haitian food, without seeing Caribbean food, without seeing Creole food. So literally Treme is an outgrowth of Congo Square. And Congo Square is actually, it is the natural square for Treme. So it's the official town square of Treme, where the Treme citizens knew that this was the place that they would come to rally and to have fun and etc. Unfortunately, Congo Square does, in its history, becomes a white-only park after the Civil War, and African Americans are actually restricted from coming in this space for almost 100 years. So this becomes a place where their culture started, but they are denied to go in. And if you notice, after Congo Square was reinstated back in the 1970s, you have just people recognizing the importance of the space. If you go to Jazz Fest, there's a Congo Square stage. And actually, a lot of the stages at Jazz Fest are named after institutions in Treme. So Treme is definitely a wonderful place, full of culture, from the Mardi Gras Indians to the Second Lines. You don't have none of that without Congo Square.
My father was what we call a big chief of 5 different groups. I've been the big chief of one group, so I don't have his stature. But I'm the big chief of Congo Square, so that's an incredible honor to be recognized as that by the rest of the chiefs.
Of all the musical traditions of New Orleans, there is none more unique and spectacular than that of the so-called Mardi Gras Indians. Originating in the 1800s as a form of cultural resistance from a time when Black Americans weren't allowed to partake in Mardi Gras celebrations, the tribes parade on a select few days each year, including Mardi Gras, dressed and masked in spectacular outfits to pay homage to Native Americans who assisted Black Americans by taking them into tribes when they were runaway slaves.
Whoa! I spy for a golden blade for web. I'm a spy of the nation that won't bow down. I meet them 1 by 1, 2 by 2. It don't really matter, they won't get through. Mardi Gras on them in 3 by 3. It won't really matter, they won't get
But I
back.
think some of the most sacred music for New Orleans are actually Black masculine Indians and Mardi Gras Indian songs. For us, when we hear the Indians, we know that that's truly a definition of New Orleans. It's truly a representation of Congo Square, and it's something that fills us all up as New Orleanians with pride, with joy, and it sounds really, really good. So it's always a good time when the Indians are singing, playing their drums or beating on their tambourines. There's always a spirit as well as a good time with the Indians, so yes.
We have the group that sings the call, and then the person who does the response. It's really close to what we do in jazz. I always say that the trumpeter in jazz music is really doing almost what a big chief is doing when he's doing the response. Early that morning when the sun come up, you hear trumpet, da ba da 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 da. I can hear the similarities.
Native Americans were not just influencing traditions in New Orleans, of course. They were influencing music all across the United States.
Well, you'd hear drums, you'd hear rattles, the sort of that 4/4 beat was standard to this and kind of created the platform or foundation for that rhythm. So that was a part of it, but also in many of the social songs among various indigenous groups come melodies. And so those were picked up as well in interesting ways, and particularly by early blues player Charlie Patton. So if you go back into those early times and you realize, okay, well, Charlie Patton was a blues player, and he had this influence upon other blues players, and that grew and grew and grew, and then traveled across to Europe, brought back by various bands in the UK, for example, and so you start to track this out and realize that it was really quite significant. Well, musicians are amazing because they collaborate so freely and openly, And I think that's a part of it that we revealed, is how much indigenous musicians were part of that mix over time. So Charlie Patton on the blues has a huge influence because rock and roll is partly based on the blues as well, right? So you just, again, track that through and look at the various musicians who picked up on that stream. Mildred Bailey, the Coeur d'Alene jazz vocalist.
Can't you see I'm no good without you? Take my lips, I want to lose them. Take my arms, I'll never use them. You're good.
She was really the first lady of jazz in terms of vocals, and the first lady of song that way, because she adapted from her indigenous heritage the way you bend the notes and things of this nature that opened up that sort of vocabulary for jazz vocalists. So when we were doing the film, Rumble, the Indians Who Rocked the World, we interviewed, for example, Tony Bennett. And he said from like the age of 16 to 20 or whatever, the only person he listened to really was Mildred Bailey, and that he fashioned his vocal style after her phrasing, right? But again, she was sort of the first lady of jazz, you know, before Billie Holiday and others. And so that has a significant rollout in how she shaped the aesthetics of the jazz sound. And you know, Robbie Robertson talks about this. And in his case, as a fellow member of the Six Nations of the Grand River Reserve.
Take a load off Fanny. Take a load for free. Take a load off Fanny. Put the load on me.
You know, he said they generally kept it kind of quiet about their indigenous heritage, you know. But it wasn't until he was extremely successful that he then started collaborating a lot with members of our community on developing new albums, new songs, and things of that nature. So there was a little bit of apprehension about revealing your identity, and otherwise just the fact that a lot of people didn't pick up on it, right? Didn't really know where some of these musicians hailed from.
I wonder why these artists would be reluctant to share their heritage.
The Indian Act is a racist policy that was federally adopted by the many versions of Canada that have existed from its Dominion of Canada when we were still, you know, at arm's length from the British Crown to when our Constitution was repatriated and we had some version of home rule government as an autonomous country. Among some of those policies was limits on the numbers of Indigenous people that could gather together. Any cultural expression that there was, you know, under the potlatch ban, for example, where you weren't allowed to do any sort of feasting ceremonies, any gathering of large numbers, wear any traditional regalia, sing any traditional songs, do any religious ceremony. Throat singing also fell under that jurisdiction of that policy. And it being a cultural practice, it being a gathering of, you know, people, it's assumed religious undertones by the church and Indian agents, that it was a sinful, demonic practice. So, you know, whether it was through spiritual intimidation or intimidation through punishment by fining or imprisonment if you couldn't pay any fines, Katajak was very, very heavily demonized, and people were afraid to do it. And so that practice went deep, deep, deep underground, and it was almost extinct. And ironically, it wasn't until we got our first Inuk Anglican minister who saw like, oh, this is going to disappear if we don't help to reassure the women who still knew how to do this that they in fact would not burn in hell for doing this, and help to revive the practice. And Inuit have been doing really amazing, innovative things with it.
Okay, so we've gotten a little bit off the track from jazz, which will probably please the people who loudly proclaim not to like jazz. And unfortunately for them, they're wrong. Because those rhythms and sounds and spirituals of Congo Square that gave rise to jazz also provided the building blocks for so much of today's popular music.
I think jazz music comes the closest to Indian music. And that's why we feel more at ease performing freely or playing freely with jazz. Not that I don't play with Western classical music, but you have to stick to the rules a little more because we cannot change those things. In jazz, you're allowed to. It's more freedom, I guess.
You know, as this birthplace of jazz, as the main trunk of the tree coming out, is really influenced 20th and 21st century music in a way that's very profound and has influenced traditional music around the world. You know, if New Orleans has a big part in the evolution of the drum set, that alone is major because almost every traditional music has incorporated the drum set in some way.
Jazz and its roots can be felt in pretty much all the Western music that you like. So when you say you don't like jazz, you're only lying to yourself. Quincy Jones, one of the greatest music producers of all time, said,
Louis Armstrong was the cornerstone. Everything that followed came from what he created.
Don't you feel silly now? You can hear it in everything from calypso to country and rock and roll to rap, especially in rap, but that's for the next episode. The incredible music we continue to enjoy today that was birthed out of this time is not an excuse to soften the horror of slavery, but rather highlight and respect the strength and resilience of the people who endured it. So let's bring this episode to a close with a quote from Frederick Douglass, the great American abolitionist, from his book, Narrative of a Slave Life, describing the songs he heard in the fields that we started this episode with.
They tell a tale which was then altogether beyond my feeble comprehension. They were tones, loud, long, and deep, breathing the prayer and complaint of souls boiling over with the bitterest anguish. Every tone was a testimony against slavery and a prayer to God for deliverance from chains. Those songs still follow me to deepen my hatred of slavery and quicken my sympathies for my brethren in bonds.
Sometime I wonder why good fortune always pass me by. But long as I know I've got a seat in your kingdom, Lord, that's all.
If music comes from the people, if the music that you're playing comes from living with the people with love, respect, and honesty, then the people will understand it. Because it's a reflection of them. It's a reflection of your love for humanity. You gain more insight, or you become one with the universe when you love the universe, when you love people. Love is the key.
Shall we delve into the history of the BLUZ? These are the blues. Nothing but blues. The blues. Oh, they say some people long ago were searching for a different tune, one that they could croon, only they can. They only had the rhythm, so they started swinging to and fro. They didn't know just what to use. This is how the blues began.
They heard the breeze in the trees, singing melody,
and they made that the start of the blues.
Yes, and here's another thing, Daddy.
What's that?
And from the jail, they came away of a downhearted friend.
Oh, she was a frantic chick.
Was she?
And they played that. They played it as part of the blues. From a whippoorwill up on a hill, they grabbed a new note. They pushed it through a horn until it was born into a blue note. And then they nursed it, they rehearsed it, and then they gave out the news that the Southland gave birth to the blues. Yeah, they nursed it, and then they rehearsed it, and they got out that news